Hello, everyone. Welcome to my show. I'm the Empath, and we're back with Babble. So we'll pick up right where we left off with Leviticus chapter 21, the holiness of the priests. The Lord commanded Moses to tell the Aaronite priests, "No priest is to make himself ritually unclean by taking part in the funeral ceremonies when a relative dies, unless it is his mother, father, son, daughter, brother, or unmarried sister living in his house. He shall not make himself unclean at the death of those related to him by marriage. No priest shall shave any part of his head or trim his beard or cut gashes on his body to show that he is in mourning. He must be holy and must not disgrace my name. He offers food offerings to me, and he must be holy." Okay, with the whole not being there for married relatives, I don't know what that's about. I guess that's just ritual stuff. "A priest shall not marry a woman who has been a prostitute, or a woman who is not a virgin, or who is divorced. He is holy. The people must consider the priest holy, because he represents the food offerings. Because he presents the food offerings to me. I am the Lord. I am holy, and I make my people holy. If a priest's daughter becomes a prostitute, she disgraces her father. She shall be burned to death." That's I'm just gonna keep going. "The high priest has had the anointing oil poured on his head and has been consecrated to wear the priestly garments, so he must not leave his hair uncombed or tear his clothes to show that he is mourning. He has been dedicated to me and is not to make himself ritually unclean, nor is he to defile my sacred tent by leaving it and entering a house where there is a dead person, even if it is his own father or mother. He shall not marry a virgin, not a widow or a divorced woman, or a woman who has been a prostitute. He shall marry only a virgin from his own clan. Otherwise his children, who ought to be holy, will be ritually unclean. I am the Lord, and I have set him apart as the high priest." I'm pretty sure that's not as relevant as it might have been back in that day. You can go ahead and try to say in the comments how it is relevant, but I don't personally think that's too relevant. But feel free to try to prove me. Not try. Feel free to prove me wrong. Anyway, the Lord commanded Moses to tell Aaron, "None of your descendants who has any physical defects may present the food offering to me. This applies for all time to come. No man with any physical defects may make the offering. No one who is blind, lame, disfigured, or deformed. No one with a crippled hand or foot. No one who is hunchback or a dwarf. No one with an eye or skin disease, and no eunuch." I can understand that, but then again, we don't make food offerings and such anymore. So, again, I don't think that's relevant. No descendant of Aaron the priest, no descendant of Aaron the priest who has any physical defects may present the food offerings to me. Such a man may eat the food offer. May, Such a man may eat the food offered to me, both the holy food offering and the very holy food offering. But because he has a physical defect, he shall not come near the sacred curtain or approach the altar. He must not profane these holy things, because I am the Lord, and I make them holy. This then is what Moses said to Aaron, the sons of Aaron, and to all the people of Israel. Whatever. The holiness of the offerings, chapter 22. The Lord commanded Moses to tell Aaron and his sons, "You must not bring disgrace on my holy name, so treat with respect the sacred offerings that the people of Israel dedicate to me. I am the Lord. If any of your descendants, while he is ritually unclean, comes near the sacred offerings which the people of Israel have dedicated to me, he can never again serve at the altar. This applies for all time to come. I am the Lord. None of the descendants of Aaron who has a dreaded skin disease or a discharge may eat any of the sacred offerings until he is ritually clean. Any priest is unclean if he touches anything which is unclean through contact with a corpse, or if he has an emission of semen, or if he has touched an unclean animal or person. Any priest who becomes unclean remains unclean until evening, and even then he may not eat any of the sacred offerings until he has taken a bath. After the sun sets he is clean, and then he may eat the sacred offerings, which are his food. He shall not eat the meat of any animal that has died a natural death, or has been killed by wild animals. It will make him unclean. I am the Lord." Again, I think that a fair bit of this stuff isn't too relevant anymore. But I'll continue. "All priests shall observe the regulations that I have given. Otherwise, they will become guilty and die. because they have disobeyed the sacred regulations. I am the Lord, and I make them holy. Only a member of a priestly family may eat any of the sacred offerings. No one else may eat them, not even someone staying with a priest or hired by him. But a priest's slave, bought with his own money or born in his home, may eat the food that the priest receives. A priest's daughter who marries someone who is not a priest may not eat any of the sacred offerings, but a widowed or divorced daughter who has no children and who has returned to live in her father's house as a dependent may eat the food her father receives as a priest. Only a member of a priestly family may eat any of it. If any person who is not a member of a priestly family eats any of the sacred offerings without intending to, he must repay the priest its full value plus an additional 20%. The priests shall not profane the sacred offerings by letting any unauthorized person eat them. This would bring guilt and punishment on such a person. I am the Lord, and I make the offerings holy. The Lord commanded Moses to give Aaron and his sons and all the people of Israel the following regulations. When any Israelite or any foreigner living in Israel presents a burnt offering, whether as sense, whether as fulfillment of a vow or as a free will offering, the animal must not have any defects. To be accepted, it must be a male without any defects. If you offer any animal that has any defects, the Lord will not accept it. When anyone presents a fellowship offering to the Lord, whether as fulfillment of a vow or as free will offering, the animal must be without any defects if it is to be accepted. Rephrase the whole thing. Wow. Do not offer to the Lord any animal that is blind or crippled or mutilated, or that has a running sore or a skin eruption or scabs. Do not offer any such animal on the altar as a food offering. As a free will offering, you may offer any animal that is stunted or not perfectly formed, but it is not acceptable in fulfillment of a vow. Do not offer to the Lord any animal whose testicles have been crushed, cut, bruised, or torn off. This is not permitted in your land. Wow, that's a lot about that. Do not offer as a food offering any animal obtained from a foreigner. Such animals are considered defective and are not acceptable. When a calf or a lamb or a kid is born, it must not be taken from its mother for 7 days, but after that it is acceptable as a food offering. Kid obviously referring to, I think it's a baby goat. I think that's what it is. Do not sacrifice a cow and its calf, or a sheep and its lamb, or a goat and its kid, on the same day. When you offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving to the Lord, follow the rules so that you will be accepted. Eat it the same day, and leave none of it until the next morning. The Lord said, Obey my commands. I am the Lord. Do not bring disgrace on my holy name. All the people of Israel must acknowledge me to be holy. I am the Lord, and I make you holy. And I brought you out of Egypt to become your God. I am the Lord. Yeah, again, I don't think much of that applies anymore. I don't know. Again, feel free to argue that, debate that. Chapter 23, the religious festivals. The Lord gave Moses the following regulations for the religious festivals. When the people of Israel are to gather for worship, you have 6 days in which to do your work. But remember that the seventh day, the Sabbath, is a day of rest. On that day do not work, but gather for worship. The Sabbath belongs to the Lord, no matter where you live. Proclaim the following festivals at the appointed times. Passover and unleavened bread. The Passover, celebrated to honor the Lord, begins at sunset on the 14th day of the first month. On the 15th day, the festival of unleavened bread begins, and for 7 days you must not eat any bread made with yeast. On the first of these days you shall gather for worship, and do none of your daily work. Offer your food offerings to the Lord for 7 days. On the 7th day you shall again gather for worship, but you shall do none of your daily work. When you come into the land that the Lord is giving you, and you harvest your grain, take the first sheaf to the priest. He shall present it as a special offering to the Lord, so that you may be accepted. The priest shall present it the day after the Sabbath. On the day you present the offering of grain, also sacrifice as a burnt offering a 1-year-old male lamb that has no defects. With it you shall present 4 pounds of flour mixed with olive oil as a food offering. The odor of this offering is pleasing to the Lord. You shall also present with it an offering of 1 quart of wine. Do not eat any of the new grain, whether raw, roasted, or baked into bread, until you have brought this offering to God. This regulation is to be observed by all your descendants for all time to come. I don't know how relevant that is. Maybe there are certain, Catholics or I don't know, Lutherans, I don't know, some denominations that do that. I haven't been to a church that does that, whatever. Um, anyway, the Harvest Festival. Count 7 full weeks from the day after the Sabbath, on which you bring your sheaf of grain to present to the Lord. On the 50th day, the day after the 7th Sabbath, um, okay, present to the Lord another new offering of grain. Each family is to bring 2 loaves of bread and present them to the Lord as a special gift. Each loaf shall be made of 4 pounds of flour baked with yeast, and shall be presented to the Lord as an offering of the first grain to be harvested. And with the bread, the community is to present 7 one-year-old lambs, 1 bull, and 2 goats, none of which may have any defects. They shall be offered as a burnt offering to the Lord, along with a grain offering and a wine offering. The odor of this offering is pleasing to the Lord. Also offer 1 male goat as a sin offering, and 2 one-year-old male lambs as a fellowship offering. The priest shall present the bread with the 2 lambs as a special gift to the Lord for the priests. These offerings are holy. On that day do none of your daily work, but gather for worship. Your descendants are to observe this regulation for all time to come, no matter where they live. When you harvest your fields, do not cut the grain at the edges of the fields, and do not go back to cut the heads of grain that were left. Leave them for poor people and foreigners. The Lord is your God. Again, I don't know how relevant these festivals are anymore. No one has taught me about these, so reading the Bible is the first exposure I've had to any of them. So, don't know how relevant they are. The New Year Festival. On the first day of the 7th month, observe a special day of rest, and come together for worship when the trumpets sound. Present a food offering to the Lord, and do none of your daily work. Okay, I think that's all of that one. Okay. The Day of Atonement. The 10th day of the 7th month is the day when the annual ritual is to be performed to take away the sins of the people. On that day, do not eat anything at all. Come together for worship and present a food offering to the Lord. Do no work on that day, because it is the day for performing the ritual to take away sin. Anyone who eats anything on that day will no longer be considered one of God's people. And if anyone does any work on that day, the Lord himself will put him to death. This regulation applies to all your descendants, no matter where they live, from sunset on the 9th day of the month to sunset on the 10th. Observe this day as a special day of rest, during which nothing may be eaten. Okay. The Festival of Shelters. The Festival of Shelters begins on the 15th day of the 7th month and continues for 7 days. On the first of these days, come together for worship and do none of your daily work. Each day for 7 days you shall present a food offering. On the 8th day, come together again for worship and present a food offering. It is a day for worship, and you shall do no work. These are the religious festivals on which you honor the Lord by gathering together for worship and presenting food offerings, burnt offerings, grain offerings, sacrifices, and wine offerings, as required day by day. These festivals are in addition to the regular Sabbaths, and these offerings are in addition to your regular gifts, your offerings as fulfillment of vows, and your free will offerings that you give to the Lord. When you have harvested your fields, celebrate this festival for 7 days, beginning on the 15th day of the 7th month. The first day shall be a special day of rest. On that day, take some of the best fruit from your trees, take palm branches and limbs from leafy trees, and begin a religious festival to honor the Lord your God. Celebrate it for 7 days. This regulation is to be kept by your descendants for all time to come. All the people of Israel shall live in shelters for 7 days, so that your descendants may know that the Lord made the people of Israel live in simple shelters when he led them out of Egypt. He is the Lord your God. So in this way, Moses gave the people of Israel the regulations for observing the religious festivals to honor the Lord. Okay, again, I don't know how much either of those 2 chapters are relevant to today. So if you see relevance in them, great. Yeah, feel free to share. If not, don't worry about it. Or if you want to find something, talk to your pastor or something. There's only so much I can tell you. I'm just a 19-year-old. What do I know? Anyway, I can do another one. Chapter 24, Taking Care of the Lamps. The Lord told Moses to command the people of Israel to bring pure olive oil of the finest quality for the lamps in the tent, so that a light might be kept burning regularly. Each evening Aaron shall light them and keep them burning until morning. There in the Lord's presence, outside the curtain in front of the covenant box, which is in the most holy place, this regulation is to be observed for all time to come. Aaron shall take care of the lamps on the lampstand of pure gold, and must see that they burn regularly in the Lord's presence. Okay? The bread offered to God. Take 24 pounds of flour and bake 12 loaves of bread. Put the loaves in 2 rows, 6 in each row, on the table covered with pure gold. 6 in each row, on the table covered with pure gold, which is in the Lord's presence. Put some pure incense on each row, as a token food offering to the Lord, to take the place of the bread. Every Sabbath, for all time to come, the bread must be placed in the presence of the Lord. This is Israel's duty forever. The bread belongs to Aaron and his descendants, and they shall eat it in a holy place, because this is a very holy part of the food offered to the Lord for the priests. An example of just and fair punishment. There was a man whose father was an Egyptian, and whose mother was an Israelite named Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri from the tribe of Dan. There in the camp this man quarreled with an Israelite. During the quarrel he cursed the Lord. So they took him to Moses, put him under guard, and waited for the Lord to tell them what to do with him. The Lord said to Moses, Take that man out of the camp. Everyone who heard him curse shall put his hands on the man's head to testify that he is guilty, and then the whole community shall stone him to death. Then tell the people of Israel that anyone who curses God must suffer the consequences and be put to death. Any Israelite or any foreigner living in Israel who curses the Lord shall be stoned to death by the whole community. Anyone who commits murder shall be put to death, and anyone who kills an animal belonging to someone else must replace it. The principle is a life for a life. Technically, wouldn't that mean that if you stone somebody, you've committed murder? I mean, I know, yes, it's God ordained sort of thing, but isn't, like, seriously, that's a little bit of a technicality that's not necessarily addressed per se. Anyway, so if anyone injures another person, whatever he has done shall be done to him. If he breaks a bone, one of his bones shall be broken. If he puts out an eye, one of his eyes shall be put out. If he knocks out a tooth, one of his teeth shall be knocked out. Whatever injury he causes another person shall be done to him in return. Whoever kills an animal shall replace it, but whoever kills a man shall be put to death. This law applies to all of you, to Israelites and to foreigners living among you, because I am the Lord your God. That sounds a little bit like Hammurabi's Code, and we've kind of moved past that, but we do adopt a similar policy of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So the literal concept is not applied, but figuratively the concept is applied. Anyway, when Moses had said this to the people of Israel, they took the man outside the camp and stoned him to death. In this way, the people of Israel did what the Lord had commanded Moses. All right, let's go for another. Chapter 25, the 7th year. The Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai and commanded him to give the following regulations to the people of Israel. When you enter the land that the Lord is giving you, you shall honor the Lord by not cultivating the land every 7th year. You shall plant your fields, prune your vineyards, and gather your crops for 6 years. But the 7th year is to be a year of complete rest for the land, a year dedicated to the Lord. Do not plant your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not even harvest the grain that grows by itself without being planted. And do not gather the grapes from your unpruned vines. It is a year of complete rest for the land. Although the land has not been cultivated during that year, it will provide food for you, your slaves, your hired men, the foreigners living with you, your domestic animals, and the wild animals in your fields. Everything that it produces may be eaten. Okay. I guess that's saying that don't farm anything, but what's naturally produced, you can go ahead and have that. Which, I don't know. I guess you could definitely figure out making that work, I guess. Like, especially if you set it up in a way that it would replenish itself. I don't know. It'd be a neat thought. Every 7 years you just get a break, a year-long vacation. It's not a bad thought. Actually, putting it into practice would be the other thing. The year of restoration. Count 7 times 7 years, a total of 49 years. Then, on the 10th day of the 7th month, the Day of Atonement, send a man to blow a trumpet throughout the whole land. In this way you shall set the 50th year apart, and proclaim freedom to all the inhabitants of the land. During this year all property that has been sold shall be restored to the original owner or his descendants, and anyone who has been sold as a slave shall return to his family. You shall not plant your fields or harvest the grain that grows by itself, or gather the grapes in your unpruned vineyards. The whole year shall be sacred for you. I don't entirely know how that would work. I mean, I can get the slaves and stuff, but land, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Short answer is I don't know, but it's not exactly most applicable nowadays. Anyway, the whole year shall be sacred for you. You shall eat only what the fields produce of themselves. In this year, all property that has been sold shall be restored to its original owner. So when you sell land to your fellow Israelite or buy land from him, do not deal unfairly. The price is to be set according to the number of years the land can produce crops before the next year of restoration. If there are many years, the price shall be higher, but if there are only a few years, the price shall be lower, because what is being sold is the number of crops the land can produce. Do not cheat a fellow Israelite, but have obedient reverence for the Lord your God. Makes sense. Oh, okay, then yeah, that would make sense. Basically, it's less that you're selling I don't know, it's kind of renting the land. So, okay. The problem of the 7th year. Obey all the Lord's laws and commands, so that you may live in safety in the land. The land will produce its crop, and you will have all you want to eat, and will live in safety. But someone may ask what there will be to eat during the 7th year, when no fields are planted and no crops gathered. The Lord will bless the land in the 6th year, so that it will produce enough food for 2 years. When you plant your fields in the 8th year, you will still be eating what you harvested during the 6th year, and you will have enough to eat until the crops you plant that year are harvested. Okay, well, that sounds all right. Good way to cover that. Restoration of property. Your land must not be sold on a permanent basis, because you do not own it. It belongs to God, and you are like foreigners who are allowed to make use of it. Okay. When land is sold, the right of the original owner to buy it back must be recognized. If an Israelite becomes poor and is forced to sell his land, his closest relative is to buy it back. A man who has no relative to buy it back may later become prosperous and have enough to buy it back himself. In that case, he must pay to the man who bought it a sum that will make up for the years remaining until the next year of restoration, when he would, in any event, recover his land. Okay, yeah. But if he does not have enough money to buy the land back, it remains under the control of the man who bought it until the next year of restoration. In that year, it will be returned to its original owner. So, I'm understanding that correctly. Yeah, in that case, he must pay to the man who bought it a sum that will make up for the next year's remaining. Okay, yeah, that's basically just being like, pay him for the amount that you'd be getting for that time. And if he buys it back, he has to buy back for however much it's worth until he would have gotten it back anyway. So, makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, if a man sells a house in a walled city, he has the right to buy it back during the first full year from the date of sale. But if he does not buy it back within the year, he loses the right of repurchase, and the house becomes the permanent property of the purchaser and his descendants. It will not be returned in the year of restoration. Okay? But houses in unwalled villages are to be treated like fields. The original owner has the right to buy them back, and they are to be returned in the year of restoration. Coolio. However, Levites have the right to buy back at any time their property in the city is assigned to them. If a house in one of these cities is sold by a Levite and is not bought back, it must be returned in the year of restoration, because the house which the Levites own in their cities are their permanent property among the people of Israel. Okay? But the pasture land around the Levite cities shall never be sold. It is their property forever. Okay? Loans to the poor. If a fellow Israelite living near you becomes poor and cannot support himself, you must provide for him as you would for a hired man, so that he can continue to live near you. Do not charge him any interest, but obey God and let your fellow Israelite live near you. Do not make him pay interest on the money you lend him, and do not make a profit on the food you sell him. This is the command of the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt in order to give you the land of Canaan to be your God. Okay, that makes sense. You can lend him stuff and he can pay you back for it. Just you can't make money off of it. And actually that's a great concept. Like if we did that, there wouldn't be homelessness. Like they would have to pay us back. I don't know. It could be taken advantage of. Like people take advantage of the current system of things. But if people were good about it, it would be a fantastic system. Because then homeless people and such, they could have a place to stay. They would have food to eat and a roof over their heads and the opportunity to go out and get a decent job. And once they got that decent job, they could work on repaying the person who took care of them. It's a great concept. I would love That's actually a concept that I thought about before, and I would love to put it into practice for people. Of course, I need to get myself financially stable first, because take the log out of your own eye before you address the splinter in someone else's. But I love that concept. I think it's fantastic, and I would love it if more people would use that. Think of how better of a world we could live in if we had people that were as selfless as that. So, next, release of slaves. If a fellow Israelite living near you becomes so poor that he sells himself to you as a slave, you shall not make him do the work of a slave. He shall stay with you as a hired man and serve you until the next year of restoration. At that time, he and his children shall leave you and return to his family and to the property of his ancestors. Give me just a moment. Okay. Yeah. So basically, if he's so poor that he can't get, he can't pay for the stuff that he's got, then have him work for you. Have him basically be your butler. So, okay. I like that thought. That's a thought that I've had before as well. At that time, he and his children shall leave you and return to his family and to the property of his ancestors. The people of Israel are the Lord's slaves, and he brought them out of Egypt. They must not be sold into slavery. Okay, so he can sell himself to you as a slave, but you treat him as a worker. And if he's able to, I don't know, I guess if he's able to buy himself back and take care of things, there's that. But if not, then he can just wait until the year of restoration and be returned to his family and such, I guess. Maybe so. The slave thing is not an idea I had, but hiring people who can't get a job, that's my thought. Do not treat them harshly, but obey your God. If you need slaves, you may buy them from the nations around you. You may also buy the children of the foreigners who are living among you. Such children born in your land may become your property, and you may leave them as an inheritance to your sons, whom they must serve as long as they live. But you must not treat any of your fellow Israelites harshly. I don't know about the whole slavery thing. Like the kind of slavery that they're talking about here isn't that bad, because they're not talking about chains and whips. They're talking about basically they are a servant. You own them, but they're basically Alfred. So it's not a bad thing. They work for you. They kind of have to, but it's telling you basically don't be a jerk. So I mean, the kind of slavery that this talks about, not that bad. But I would not want anyone as that kind of slave. I would hire somebody and have them work for me, and that would be either with the intention of, well, there's someone to work for me, and or that's until they can get something to get themselves off their feet. Like if they wanted to get a job doing this or that, so potentially not permanent. But I wouldn't want to own anybody. I don't believe it's right for you to own anybody. At least not as like an official sense like that. If you're talking more or less and that's whatever. Owning people, Not good. Unless you're doing it over a video game. Suppose a foreigner living with you becomes rich, while a fellow Israelite becomes poor and sells himself as a slave to that foreigner or to a member of his family. After he is sold, he still has the right to be bought back. One of his brothers or his uncle or his cousin or any other of his close relatives may buy him back. Or if he himself earns enough, he may buy his own freedom. He must consult the one who bought him, and they must count the years from the time he sold himself until the next year of restoration, and must set the price for his release on the basis of the wages paid a hired man. Okay, yeah. So you sell him for however much labor you would get out of him for the time that you would own him until he'd be returned back, and that's how much money you give him when he sells himself to you. But if he is set and he's made enough money that he can pay off the rest of his debt from that point to from the new point of when he's working for you to the point of restoration, then he can do that. It makes sense, and it's pretty smart mathematically. So, picking up where I left off, he must refund a part of the purchase price according to the number of years left, as if he had been hired on an annual basis. His master must not treat him harshly. If he is not set free in any of these ways, he and his children must be set free in the next year of restoration. An Israelite cannot be a permanent slave, because the people of Israel are the Lord's slaves. He brought them out of Egypt. He is the Lord their God. Again, slave is not quite the right word because of the connotation, but I think you understand the meaning. It's less of I own you, you're my property, and more affectionate, more familial than it is possessive per se. So again, I think slave is not the right word. That's just the closest that they could come up with at the time when they were writing this particular version. He brought them out of Egypt. So I think that's where I'm going to stop today. So thank you for watching. Like and favorite if you enjoyed. Subscribe to become a VIP today. If you want to talk about any of the stuff that I went over today, then go ahead and leave it in the comments. And I'm looking forward to what you have to say. So I will see you all next time. Have a great day.